All right, so let's get going on today's class. Before we begin, I'm going to be passing around just a sign-in sheet. Just let me know you're here. So find your name, sign in next to it. If you don't see your name, that just means that you weren't officially registered in this course about a week ago when I made this. So if you don't see your name, just write it in an empty space, sign next to it, and we'll know that you attended the first class. All right, so today we're going to be introducing you to the wild and wonderful world of cognitive psychology. So this is the course where you are basically going to learn that your mind works in a way that is completely opposite to the way that you think that it works. So cognitive psychology has made some of the biggest strides in psychology and basically has told us that what we think, especially intuitively, about how our minds work is not even close to the way that it actually works. So today's class is going to be your intro to the class, so just so that you know what to expect, you know what's coming up, how to work everything in the course. So it's going to be your introduction to this course. So we're going to start off with myself. I'll introduce myself, talk a little bit about the research projects that I do here. I work in cognitive psychology. So I'll talk about some of the work that I do, and then I'll also talk about the Stigma-free initiative that I'm a part of. Then we're going to do a little bit of cognitive warm-up. We're going to shake off some of those cobwebs that might have developed in our minds over the winter break. So just a little bit of cognitive warm-up, illustrating some of the principles we're going to investigate this semester. And then we'll get back to some administrative stuff, course overview, course procedure, and then the syllabus highlights, just so that you know how to read the syllabus, where to find the information, how to navigate your progress in this course. All right, so let's start off with a brief introduction and also the most difficult part of this course, which is how to pronounce my name. Some of you I recognize, so this will be a review. Some of you I don't, so this will be new. My name is Dr. Igor Yudichevich, and the last name is difficult, so we'll break it down piece by piece. It starts with a U, and then that is followed by a reach, and then you open up and say ah, and then it ends with a veach. And if you're in maybe a math minor, that little gray square, a triangle right there, gray square, it's early. That little gray triangle right there is a veach. So it's U, reach, veach. So let's try that on 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, that wasn't too bad. Let's try it one more time. 1, 2, 3. All right, awesome. So this is a very important slide in all of my courses because you are going to have questions in this course. We are going to explore aspects of the human mind, aspects of human cognition, human thinking, that is going to be very counterintuitive to what you might have already thought, conceptions that you might have brought to this course. Basically, one of the hallmarks of our cognition is that human cognition is not pre-programmed to understand human cognition. So don't be surprised if at some point in this course, we go over material and it's just not making any sense to you. That would be the time to check this slide out, remember it, and put up your hand and say, Dr. Yudichevich, can you explain that one more time? Dr. Yudichevich, I have a question about this aspect of today's lecture. Dr. Yudichevich, can you give me another example about that? Can you explain it in another way? Basically, there will be built-in time for every class meeting for questions if you need it. So feel free, put up your hand. You know, Dr. Yudichevich, can I ask this? And we'll address it, and it'll help give the course a more full understanding of some of the aspects of cognitive psychology. All right, so that's the name. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of background on some of the research projects that I work on, some of the stuff that I do in cognitive psychology. So I work with how the mind understands visual language. So more than ever, I say, all right, so in the meantime, I was going to say this after I tell you all about my wonderful research, but we are going to do the cognitive warm-up at this time. So what you're going to need for this to kind of shake off the cobwebs and hopefully not break any more machinery. what you're going to need for this is just a pencil and a paper, and we are going to do 2 challenges that are going to illustrate some of the cognitive principles that we're going to be looking at this semester. So we're not going to explain it today, but just remember this for later, because we are going to revisit these. All right, challenge number 1. Here we go. All right, so this is going to be one of those train problems. First problem being how to draw a train. Oh, wait, there we go. All right, so we got 2 trains. They are 100 miles apart. All right, so 2 trains, 100 miles apart. And the one train starts traveling at towards the other train at the same time. First train is traveling at 60 miles an hour. Second train is traveling at 40 miles an hour. They're on the same tracks. They're going to collide. At the moment when this train takes off, a bird who is on the train starts flying towards the other train at 80 miles an hour. Fast bird. So it starts flying towards the other train at 80 miles an hour. And as soon as it gets to the other train, it takes off in reverse direction towards the first train. And then as soon as it gets back to the first train, it takes off again towards the second train. And it does this until the 2 trains collide. My question is, how far will that bird have flown by the time the 2 trains collide? So again, 100 miles apart, one train going at 60 miles an hour, another train going at 40 miles an hour. The instant they start traveling towards each other, bird starts flying towards the other train at 80 miles an hour, and as soon as it reaches the other train, it'll reverse course, reverse course, reverse course, and it stops once the 2 trains collide. How far will that bird have flown? That is your challenge, our first cognitive warm-up. All right. So, show of hands without showing the answer, without giving the answer. How many solved the problem? Show of hands. We have a few. All right. How many are sure that they solved the problem? Because I saw some of this going on. So how many are pretty sure they solved it? Almost nobody. All right. All right. So it seems like very few of you actually solved the problem. And the reason that I have this as one of the first warm-ups that we do is that this illustrates a very, very important aspect of cognition, which is representation. How do our minds represent information that we use for cognition? How do we represent problems that we're trying to solve? So much of cognitive psychology is figuring out the representations that our mind has, because oftentimes there are 2 or more representations that are possible. Information can be represented in many ways, and it's up to us as psychologists to figure out how does our human mind represent it. So one way to represent this problem is as a distance problem. And you might say to yourself, all right, we got train number 1, so T1 there, we got train number 2, and we got the bird. When they start, these 2, train 1 and train 2, and the bird, they're 100 miles apart. Train 1 is going this way at 40 miles an hour. The bird is going this way at 80 miles an hour. So that means that they're traveling towards each other at 120 miles an hour. They're going to cover 100 miles in 100 divided by 120 equals, I'm not going to do that right now, but that many hours. All right? So that's how long it's going to take them. During that time, train number 1 is also going to have traveled. So train number 1 is going to travel that many hours times the 60 miles per hour So that's going to equal some distance. Train number 2 is also going to have traveled that many hours times 40 miles an hour, and that also equals some distance. So that distance, 100 miles, minus distance 1 and distance 2, is going to give you the new separation, and then you start the whole process again. And every single time it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you want to solve this, you actually have to start using like integral calculus in order to get to the time when the distances are really, really small. This is the solution if you represent it as a distance problem. So if you're struggling with this problem, that tells me as a psychologist that your mind represented this as a distance problem. But that's only one way to do it. The other way to represent it is as a time problem. And if you represent it as a time problem, we have train number 1, it's going 60 miles an hour. Train number 2 is going 40 miles an hour. They are going towards each other at 100 miles an hour. They're 100 miles apart. That means they're going to crash in an hour. So we know that the 2 trains are going to crash in an hour. The bird flies 80 miles per hour. It's going to have an hour to fly. It's going to fly 80 miles. Done. So that's the solution. The bird flies 80 miles. And you can see, and this is part of what cognitive psychology is all about, is that the representation that you use determines your behavior. So whether or not you could solve this was determined by whether or not you represented it in this way, or if you represented it as a time problem. So when we take a look at behavior, so much of behavior depends upon how we as humans represent the information that we're trying to process, and that determines whether or not we can successfully navigate a particular behavior. All right, that was challenge number 1. Challenge number 2. This one has 2 aspects to it. One is kind of a mathematical one, and the other one is sort of a feel one. So just a feeling that you might have. All right, so this one is about coin flipping. This is known as the St. Petersburg game, or other St. Petersburg game. All right. Imagine that somebody came up to you and offered you the opportunity to play a game of chance. And the game of chance revolves around flipping a coin. So you start off on your first turn. If you flip a head, then your prize money doubles. If you flip a tail, then game is over, and you take whatever dollars you have at that time. So this is the way that it works. You walk up to the game, and the first prize is $2. If it flips heads, then you get those $2 and you keep going on. If it flips tails, game is over and you get nothing. So you got a 50% chance on your first turn to win $2, 50% chance that you just walk away with nothing. If you continue in the game, you flip another coin. If it comes up heads, then your prize money doubles to $4 and you continue playing. If it then comes up heads again, your prize money doubles to $8. If it then comes up heads again, your prize money doubles to $16. And it keeps doing that until you flip tails. And then once you flip tails, whatever your money has doubled into, you get that, right? So you will, as long as you pass that first round, you will be walking away with some money. All right, so again, you start off with a $2 prize. If you flip heads, you win it, but you continue on into the game and the prize potentially doubles. And you continue in this game, flipping a coin, until you come up with tails. And then as soon as you hit tails, you get the money that you won up to that point. You get whatever your doubled prize money is at that point. So is that clear? Okay. The question is, for you, if this game cost an entry fee to play, if you had to put up some sort of entry fee for the opportunity to play this game, how much, number one, would be a logical, rational amount to pay for this game? And then how much, number two, do you actually feel that you yourself would pay to play this game? All right, so one is logical, one is based kind of like on a mathematical analysis. The other one is how much do you feel that you would be willing to play this game? So just to kind of explain this, if I offered you a 50-50 chance to win $10, that game would be a bargain if you only have to pay $1 to play it. Because on average, you're going to win $5, and you're going to come up with a $4 net profit. On the other hand, you would be irrational to pay $7 to play a game where you have a 50-50 chance of winning $10. Because on average, your expected payout is $5, which means you'll be losing $2, which is an irrational thing. So again, on this game where the prize doubles, every single time you roll, flip a heads, and your game is over and you get that prize money as soon as you roll a tails, how much is it logical to pay to play this game? And then if this was a real situation, right, if this actually was an opportunity that was presented to you, how much do you feel you'd be willing to pay for that game? All right, so give that a shot, and we'll see what we come up with. All right. So we're back. Yay. Okay. So let's start off with the feel, and we'll just kind of do a hands up survey of this. So in terms of feel, how many people were willing to pay $100 or more to play this game? Nobody. All right. $10 or more. We got, yeah? We got about 4. All right. $5 or more. All right. Under, I guess everybody else is under $5. Yeah? Okay. So we got 0, 0, and then everyone. Okay. So that is what you feel you'd be willing to play this game. So that is what your cognitive process has told you would be the amount of money that you think is a good price to pay for this game. It's something that is the amount of money that your mind has come down to in order to figure out how much it's going to want to pay for this game. I actually doubled the amount. So you were supposed to start with $1, but it doesn't change the analysis. So this is what we have in terms of feel. What do we have in terms of what's logical, what is rational? And we'll see what those words mean as we go through this course. Well, it has to do with the expected value. So you remember when I was talking earlier, we mentioned that the expected value is how much you can expect to earn when you play this game. So if you pay above the expected value, you're going to lose money in the long run. If you pay below the expected value, you're going to gain money in the long run. So paying less is the rational move. Paying more is an irrational move. So what is the expected value for the St. Petersburg game? Well, this is the expected value. So again, I doubled it by mistake. But anyways, the analysis is the same. You got a 50-50 chance, 1 out of 2 chance of winning $1. If you win that, if you keep going, then you have a 25% chance to win $2. Because to win $2, you gotta flip 2 heads in a row. You got a 25% chance of doing that. 3 heads in a row, you got a 12.5% chance, or 1/8 chance to do that. So 3 heads in a row, you'll win $4. 5 heads in a row, you'll win $8, and it keeps going and it keeps going. And this expected value is additive. So this is what you can expect to win when you play this game in any iteration of the game. And you can see that 1 times 1 divided by 2 is a half. 1 times 2 divided by 4 is a half. 1 times 4 divided by 8 is a half. 1 times 8 divided by 16 is a half. And you basically have a half plus 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 a half all the way to infinity. This game is actually worth infinite dollars. Rationally, if somebody came up to you and said, would you pay $100 to play this game? a rational thinking machine would say, yes, that is a bargain. $100, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. What an opportunity. If somebody came up to you and said, would you play this game for $1,000? A rational thinking machine would say, yes, what a bargain. I can't believe I can play it for so incredibly cheap. If somebody came up to you and said, for $1 million, would you be willing to play this game? You would say, yes, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm getting it so incredibly cheap. Because each play of this game, the expected outcome is literally infinite amounts of money. So the question is, and we're going to take a look at this when we take a look at decision-making irrationality, if this is the rational answer, why were so many people not even close, right? Why did it, nobody was above $100. A couple of people, $10 and above. So why is there such a difference between this and this? And then also notice that I said a rational thinking machine would choose an infinite amount of money to play this game. Does that mean that we're not rational? Spoiler alert, no. But it means that we take into account something else. So we don't just take into account these probabilities here. Our minds are somehow taking some other factors into account to come up with this, how much do we feel we're going to pay for it? And we're going to see some of those aspects and how your cognition works to come up with this answer if it differs from what is rational. So a lot of what we do in cognitive psychology is we analyze what is rational, we analyze what humans do, and then we answer the question of why are those two different? And what does that tell us about how humans actually think? All right, so let's back up a little bit now. We'll just give you a brief look at some of my research, just so you kind of know where I'm coming from, what is some of the work that I do. And then we'll take a look again at the Stigma Free Initiative. It's an important part of every single course for me. And finally, we'll take a look at the course overview, again, so that you know what to expect, what's going on. All right, so in terms of research projects, as I mentioned before, I work in visual language. So how does our mind understand visual information, pictures, images, emojis? How do we understand things that are not words? And a lot of my research takes advantage of the fact that one of the places where visual language is used immensely is in comic book art. So a lot of my work has to do with taking a look at these human-produced artifacts and decoding them for the pictorial devices that they use, and then making inferences about what does that mean for our minds. So in terms of visual language, I'll just give you an example. Here are two covers by two different artists, and you can see that there are similarities in both of these covers, indicating this sort of grammar of a visual language. So you can see there in the Daredevil cover, we got a gigantic image of the Kingpin, and then in the Falcon cover, we got a gigantic image of maybe Blackheart. I didn't read that one, but anyways, two gigantic images for the villains. You can see in the Daredevil cover, we got the hero slightly off center, asymmetrical. In the Falcon, we got the heroes slightly off center, asymmetrical. So these are not arbitrary choices that these artists made. This is part of visual language and communicates things to us. So the gigantic size communicates that these villains are a threat, that they're powerful, and the asymmetric placement of the heroes tells us that they are different from the normal. Usually in human biology, we are symmetrical. We got bilateral symmetry. Anything that is asymmetrical kind of hints to us that there's something weird, there's something a little different, and that's what these artists are doing using this visual language. So some of my work took a look at the use of metaphor in visual language. So some things are literal. So if you're drawing a picture of a person running really fast, like the flash here, some things are literal. So when you actually run, your hands and arms are in different positions. That actually happens. When you run, you tilt forward. That actually happens. Those are literal devices. but it doesn't matter how fast you run, you're not going to have lines coming out the back of you. That is a metaphorical device. This does not really happen. So we took a look at how artists combine literal and metaphorical devices to produce pictures that are understandable to their audience. And what we found, and this is one of the articles that we're going to actually read as part of the course, is that when combining literal and metaphorical information, they'll combine as much literal information as they can in a picture, but they'll only include one metaphorical device, one piece of metaphorical information. And we're going to see what that tells us about how we process literal and metaphorical information in general. And we'll take a look at that later on in the semester. So that was actually, if you want to kind of check it out ahead, that was actually published in the Comics Grid, Journal of Comics Scholarship. It was also published in the Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics, was a follow-up study. Other work that I've done recently, this was done with a former graduate of IUSB. We took a look at the pictorial device of gigantic size. So here we have Mockingbird drawn much bigger than everybody else. Mockingbird is a regular sized human being, but she's drawn gigantic here. This is a metaphorical use of gigantic size. On the other hand, though, this is Galactus. He is a literal giant. He eats worlds in the Marvel Universe. So this is a literal depiction of gigantic size. So we took a look at how do you understand that this is not a gigantic individual. It's just that she's important, she's powerful, she's central to the story. Whereas here, you understand that he is literally, hundreds of stories tall. How does your mind decode that? And we published this in the International Journal of Comic Art. And as it turns out, your mind takes into account both contextual information. So what do you know about these characters? What do you know about comic book art, the genre of comic book art? And it also takes into account structural information. So the fact that she is not a complete figure, her legs have gone missing, but he seems to be a complete figure interacting with the environment. Your mind takes those into account and makes a decision that this is metaphorical, but this is literal. All right, and the last one that I wanted to mention, this is just to kind of show you how weird and crazy sometimes cognitive psychology can get. I wanted to know where do these metaphors come from? So everybody understands in this picture that this individual, she has had a bright idea. The light bulb above the head. Everybody knows that that means that the character has suddenly thought of an idea. The question is, why do we know that? How did this become a part of language, of our visual language? How did this become a saying in our collective understanding of how vision works? So I didn't look at the light bulb over the head. The device that I looked at was close-up eye asymmetry. So close-up eye asymmetry means that, number one, you have a close-up of the individual, so mostly upper torso and the head. And the other aspect of it is that you have asymmetry, and it happens around the eyes. So here we have lightning only coming out of one of Storm's eyes. We got hair coming down only on the other eye. Here we got Magneto with his magnetic powers coming out of one eye. Here we got from the Harbinger series, Peter, I forgot his last name, but anyways, power shown only on one eye. There is nothing asymmetrical about these individual powers, so that is being used metaphorically to kind of show their weirdness, their otherness. You can also do it via shading or placement of objects. So here we have in the Rocketeer, shading causing the asymmetry. Here we have with the Joker, the camera causing the asymmetry. You can put that camera symmetrically in front of your face. Here we have an even bigger or a more straightforward example. Here we have the skull causing asymmetry just around the eyes. And again, this is the artist choosing to use that asymmetry. And then you can also have it in compositions, and we've seen this already with the Daredevil and Falcon covers. And I was wondering, where did this come from? Where did this device actually originate? And what I found was that it originated not in comic books, not in movies. Cable is actually one of the the biggest IA symmetry people. But it didn't originate in comic books, it didn't originate in movies, it originated in music, and it originated with David Bowie. And specifically, it originated with his Aladdin Sane cover for that album. So if you combine developmental psychology, cognitive psychology, psychology of art, and and you take a look at when individuals are the most susceptible to outside influences, when can they have that crystallizing experience, that one experience that kind of sets their artistic trajectory for the rest of their lives? You know, that story where somebody's like, oh my gosh, I went to the museum and I saw the Mona Lisa and I decided then and there that was what I was going to do. When did you have that crystallizing experience combined with when are you at your most productive in terms of being an artist? Tends to be around 30-ish years of age. What we found was that the explosion in the use of close-up eye asymmetry occurred in the 90s, and that was when children around 9 to 13 years old would have seen this image for the first time. That's when this album was released. That's when you're most susceptible. 20-ish years later, they're in their 30s. That's when they're most productive, and the use of QA just exploded at that time, indicating that it was this one single image that caused that explosion. So it wasn't the first, he's not the first person to ever use asymmetry around the eyes, right? Anybody that ever drew a pirate with an eye patch has done that. But this was the image that made it incorporated into our visual language. And this, I'm like so ecstatic that I have David Bowie in one of my publications. And another thing on my bucket list, I actually got the F word published in this article too, so that's 2 in 1. You can check that out. That's some of the research to back up that claim. All right, so moving along, if you want to take a look at some of the research that I do try to regularly post on Twitter and Instagram. Also, some of the research that my students have done, I'll post as well. So that's where you can follow me at Aladdin Sane. Play on Aladdin Sane. You can also check out the hashtag Comic Book of Scientists and Too Hard for Soft Science. Those will both kind of take you to some of the posts on some of the work that we do in our lab, both me and my students. All right. Now we get to the stigma-free portion of this class. So the Stigma-Free Initiative, this is an initiative that has been started by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I took the pledge to be stigma-free. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to alleviate the stigma that comes with having a mental disorder or a mental illness. And far too many people do not seek treatment when they should because of the stigma that surrounds mental illnesses. So as part of that initiative, we're trying to remove the stigma. And part of that for me is just to admit that I was diagnosed with depression a few years ago. So I suffer from a mental illness, but it's time to get that out there. It's time to shed light on that. And the other thing I want to do with this is to kind of show anybody who might be going through mental illness and thinking that it's hopeless, there is light on the other side. So just kind of give you a timeline. This goes up until spring a couple of years ago. This is when I started at IUSB. So I started in the fall of 2010. This was when I was diagnosed with depression. And I would have loved to tell you that my depression actually started maybe a month before I was diagnosed. That's not true. It started years ago. So I was battling with this on my own for years, which is one of the reasons why I really want to make sure that this stigma is lifted and people don't feel ashamed to go seek help. So anyways, undiagnosed for a while, diagnosed with depression. My final prescription was filled. So I was on prescription in cognitive behavioral therapy. Final prescription was filled in about spring of 2013. And I would love to tell you that that was the end and I was fully recovered. That is not the case. Recovery is a slow process. It's got its ups and downs. It's forward steps, it's backward steps. I take more steps forward than I take backward these days. But I still notice things, especially when I get fatigued, that kind of creep back in there. So the recovery is still occurring. But just to kind of show you what can happen when you get that professional help. Our production here at IUSB, and really in any university, is kind of measured by how much we publish. So how much research do we actually put out there? How much research do we actually publish? And during this time when I was suffering from depression, I had one publication, and that was back in 2012. When I started on my recovery, and this is a big part of this, things actually got a lot better. So by 2016, I had 2 publications in the spring of 2016, and another publication in the fall of 2016, and then I had 5 more in the spring of 2016. And then last year, I published yet another article. We had another one submitted. So just want to let everybody know, number 1, go seek help. Number 2, light at the end of the tunnel. I know that when you're in the thick of it, because I remember when I was in the thick of it, I thought this is just it. This is the way I am. This is my life from now on. Not true. And you can just see the massive difference that happens when you get some help. And one of the big things that helped me was, oh, my trains are gone. I was able to change my representations of how I took in information. So anyway, that's just my PSA for Stigma Free. And then if anybody thinks that they might be suffering from a mental illness and you don't know where the first step should be, what's the first thing you should try, I'll tell you right now, come see me. Just drop by an office hour, drop me a line on Canvas, and we'll go from there. So I can be your first step, but definitely if you think you might be suffering from a mental illness, take that first step. Make sure that you are getting that help. Is there a question? Yep.
Yeah. So you're saying, not to pry too much, I guess, but final prescription fill, how did you change those representations to avoid the medication, I guess, to get to this point?
Yep. So not prying. One of the things that was that occurred with my depression, it was built on representations that came from learned helplessness. So I was bullied for a while. It didn't even stop in high school, which it did. But anyways, I was bullied, and part of that led to this idea of learned helplessness. When you suffer from learned helplessness, you tend to think that things are permanent, pervasive, and personal. So if anything bad happens to you, and bad stuff happens to everybody, but when a bad thing happens to somebody with those types of representations, number 1, they think it's personal. So if I had a setback, like I'll put it in terms for students, it's a little bit easier. If you fail an exam, if you take it personally, you're going to think to yourself, I'm stupid, right? It's not the exam's too hard. It's me. Something's wrong with me. I'm too stupid. You take it as pervasive. It's everything. It's not just psychology that I'm no good at. I'm no good at everything. And you take it as permanent. And you say to yourself, I'm stupid and that's just not going to change. So whenever something bad happened to me, that's the way that I process that information. What the cognitive behavioral therapy consisted of was to come up with counterexamples of that. So when you fail in an exam and you say to yourself, oh man, I'm stupid, you need to come up with a counterexample and say, well, no, I got an A+ in my other psychology course. So maybe it's the exam that was or maybe I didn't prepare, but it's not me, it's not personal. Pervasive, I'm horrible at school. Well, no, because I do have a strong GPA, and you have to bring those counterexamples to bear. And I remember my therapist telling me that it was going to take time. That's the big thing. It takes time because he literally told me that I have years of practice at doing that type of a representation. So literally, I'm an expert at interpreting information the wrong way. And he said it was gonna take some time. And that's one of the things that I noticed in my recovery at the beginning. It was a big effort. Because anytime something happened, I would have to say, no, wait a second, let me think. Oh yeah, I remember that other time, I got called into a meeting and everything went great. I remember that other time I submitted an article and actually got approved, right? I remember that. So, and then it just becomes more and more automatic until that positive idea becomes your new automatic, and the negative ideas just become less and less frequent because, like I said, everybody gets setbacks, everybody has problems, but a lot of people with depression, they process it in a very unhealthy way. Yep. That was a good question. All right, so what we're going to do now to round out today's class, just a few things about what you can expect, and then just how to check out the syllabus. So in terms of course objectives, this is going to be about human cognitive processing of information. So we're going to cover a lot of human behavior and human thinking, but everything is going to be in terms of analyzing the information that's coming in, analyzing the information or behavior that comes out of the individual, and based on those two pieces of information, determining what's going on inside. So the same way that you were given the train problem, that's the information coming in, and most of you were unable to solve that train problem, indicated to me that inside your brain you represented it as a distance problem. So this is going to be the approach that we're going to use for every aspect of thinking and behavior that we look at this semester. All right, like all of my courses, I like to run my courses like a research lab meeting. So all course content is open for ideas and discussion. Just raise your hand. Dr. Udicevich, does that mean this? Dr. Udicevich, is this like this? Dr. Udicevich, I remember reading this. Doesn't that contradict what you just said? Anything you want to bring up, feel free. Make sure that it's on content, but definitely we're going to have time built into each class. I am a firm believer that there are no bad questions or bad ideas. It's that phrase, there's no bad questions except the one that's unasked. However, there are wrong ideas, and this is especially true in this course because the way that our mind works is not the way that we intuitively think that it works. So any kind of preconceptions that you might have had about how your mind works is usually not the way that it actually works, and it's devious because we think we have access to how, let's not do that again. We think we have access to how our minds work. We actually don't. It is hidden. A lot of the processes are hidden. So you're going to have a lot of wrong ideas coming in here, and that's totally fine because in my own work as a research psychologist, 95% of the time I'm wrong. That's why we do the experiments, to see what happens. But that's just how the science works. So don't worry about being wrong. I'm right there with you. And we'll make sure that you eventually get to that right, correct understanding. All right, Syllabus Contact. There's the contact information. The only thing I want to mention about that, to contact me, please use Canvas messages. Do not phone me in my office. I still have that red little blinking light where all the answering machine messages are, and I don't know how to access it. So do not phone. Use Canvas messages. I try to keep the turnaround 24 hours. So I'll do my best again this year. So that is my preferred way for you to contact me. Also in Canvas, you're going to have access to the lecture slides. So the syllabus, other course information. So I will post the slides that I use. I'll take out any spoilers if I need to, but I will post those. You can download those at any time. They'll be available before class. In terms of the required text and resources, we are going to be using a eText initiative. So this is already set up in Canvas. So this is a module that you can access, and all the resources can be used, can be accessed through this module. So you click on that. And it'll take you to open another window. You click on that, and it'll take you into the MindTap learning program. This is what we're going to be using for the course of the semester. So I highly recommend try it out if you haven't already. Try it out today. Poke around, explore it. The first assignment that you're going to be doing is just a video assignment where you're going to watch how to use this particular MindTap. I'm going to post up a PDF of some information that you might want to know. But this is also my first semester using this, so we're going to kind of learn about it together. But first and foremost, make sure this works on whatever computer you're using. So if you got to enable pop-ups, enable the pop-ups. If you got to install Flash, install Flash. Make sure that it's opening up on your computer. All right, other things to know about the course. Section reviews. So if you'd like to earn 10% towards your final grade, you're invited to complete 46 section reviews by the due dates listed. So that might seem like a lot. It's short. Basically what section reviews are is they're pre-tests to reward you for doing the readings before class. basically to reward you for coming to class, having read the material, and being ready to go. So the 46 is just because there's these come at the end of just about every single section in your textbook. So in each chapter there might be 4, there might be 5. They're like 4 to 5 question little reviews of the section that you just read. Completely open book, completely, however you want to do it. But there are 46 of those, again, to reward you for reading ahead and coming to class prepared. I will drop your 4 lowest section review scores, and you can do them at any time. So if you know that you have a hectic schedule coming up in 2 weeks, you can read ahead, you can do those at any point in time, and that is true of everything in this semester. You can work ahead on anything that you feel the need. So those are the section reviews. There are homework assignments. This will be worth, again, your invitation to earn 10% towards your final grade. And the homework assignments are going to consist of explorations and critical thinking, some critical thinking activities. The explorations are going to be in each chapter. They're videos, short little videos, like 5, 7-minute videos that you can watch that'll illustrate some of the things that we've been learning in this semester, followed up by really short, kind of like 4 to 5 multiple choice question quizzes about the video. So those, again, will help you get a deeper understanding of some of the things that we're going to be exploring. And then there's going to be 2 critical thinking skill assignments, 1 reflecting on personal confirmation bias, and 2 of comparative analysis. I'm still finalizing those, but we're going to cover that information before you're being asked to do those assignments, and that'll give you a little bit of insight into how to critically think about information and basically not fall for some of the intuitive biases that we have that lead people to believe things and hold on to beliefs in the face of evidence. All right, Cog Labs. This is going to give you some hands-on experience. So you're going to be experiencing classic psychology experiments firsthand. These are going to be directly tied to phenomenon that we're going to be exploring. So this is a nice way. Again, there'll be short Cog Labs. It'll mention how long they'll take. Some take 10 minutes, some take 20 minutes. But they'll be your way to actually firsthand experience what it is that we're talking about. So when we're talking about memory, you actually get to do a memory Cog Lab to feel what it's like. When we're talking about visual search, you actually get to do a visual search Cog Lab to feel what it's like. So this will give you, again, a sort of firsthand experience to sort of help you understand what it is that we're talking about. Chapter quizzes. Chapter quizzes are going to be the quizzes that occur after we cover the course material. So the section reviews, that's before we cover anything. Again, that's your reward for having read the material. The chapter quizzes, that's after we cover everything. That's just to measure where you're at after that section is finished. All of these things are being done through the module. All of these things you do at home, all of these things are open book. So I'm not asking you to memorize material in the book. That comes up in a little bit. But this is just, again, to see where you're at the end of the chapter. So there's 10 chapter quizzes, and again, you can do those at any time during the semester. I would recommend, though, wait until after we've covered the information. All right, one thing that I'm really excited about is this chapter mastery training. So this is going to be this is your opportunity to earn 20% towards your final grades. There's going to be 10 chapter mastery training units. Those are due by the due dates listed. Typically, they're going to be right before the exam for the chapters that are being tested. And what these are is they're interactive training and study guides that are built into your textbook that basically analyze where you're at and then give you practice to take you, to the next steps for you to help to learn the material, for you to memorize some of the material, for you to basically get that practice in. Explore these, check them out. They can be completed anytime before their due date. But I will just want to make sure that everybody knows this is based on the idea of distributed practice. So cognitive psychologists, one of the things that they've shown is that it is way better to do short little practice sessions and then take a break than it is to cram the night before the exam if you want to learn the material. So 10 minutes every single day during a week is going to do so much better for your learning outcomes than 70 minutes, on that Sunday night. So the way that this is set up is that when you go to do one session of your chapter mastery training, once you complete that, it'll indicate how soon you can come back to complete the next session. So it might say, all right, based on the analysis, you now are going to take a 4-hour break from doing the mastery training. You might take a 6-hour break. It might be a 3-hour break. It's going to vary across students and across different training things. But just know that it's going to take multiple sessions to earn your mastery points. So plan on, visiting your module, visiting this mastery training, every day, if you can fit it in, maybe a couple times a day, but you are going to be enforced to take breaks because it's not going to let you complete it one after another. And again, this is designed, and that's why I'm so excited about it. This is designed on how your mind actually works, and this is a way to enable you to distribute the practice so that you can learn more effectively. All right, and then we got exams. Exams are going to be 30% towards your final grade. There's going to be 3 exams plus a final exam. None of them are cumulative, including the final exam, so it's always going to be on whatever it was that we covered since the previous exam. There's the information for the makeup exam, so you can read this in terms of who to contact, what to do when you need to write a makeup exam. The one thing, though, that I want to point out is that circumstances, if you're going to miss a makeup, they have to be beyond your control. I'm very understanding in terms of what's beyond your control. So if you're sick, that's beyond your control. If your boss is telling you you need to go to a training session, that's beyond your control. If your child has a fever and your daycare does not allow you to drop them off when they have a fever, that's beyond your control. So I'm very flexible on what's beyond your control. The one thing I cannot be flexible on is documented. I need to have some sort of documentation. So if you're sick, you need to go to either the Health and Wellness Center here or go to your doctor, get yourself a doctor's note. If your boss is requiring you to come in for a training session on exam day, forward me their email. If you can't take your child into your daycare, let them know and ask them to send me an email about it. I just need some sort of paper trail in order for you to be able to write the makeup. Is there a...
You answered that.
Okay. All right, and then the final thing, second final thing, and this is a new initiative that I'm trying here. We're going to be doing a little bit of professional development. This is going to be a social media professional development aspect to this course. So one thing that has come to my mind, well, 2 things that have come to my attention recently. Number one, social media is becoming more and more important for every aspect of a person's life. So it wasn't until I started republishing after, during my recovery, that one of the first editors that accepted an article emailed me and said, do you have a Twitter account? Because somebody was throwing shade at my article and I did not know that. So since that time, I noticed that more and more people are making connections, promoting their work, promoting themselves using social media. And the other thing that I've noticed is that more and more people do not know how to best do this. So the same way that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when email accounts first started appearing, and people thought it would be a good idea to be bootylicious69@hotmail.com until they had to hand in their resume for that job interview, and they were like, oh, and what's your email? Same way, people do not really have professional development for their social media. So we're going to do things to kind of develop your social media presence so that when you graduate and you're either applying to grad school or you're applying for a job, and the people making that decision look you up on Twitter or look you up anywhere else, they're not going to see any red flags. And what they're going to see is evidence that you are the person for that position. So we're going to start it off, and we'll do it slowly. It's not going to be too arduous, but it will be worth a 10%, up to a 10% bonus towards your exam score. And it's going to be available for every exam. So we're going to have something to do every single week. It's not going to take too much time. Most social media stuff doesn't. And you can earn up to 10% of a bonus towards each of your exams. So I'll have more details about that as we start rolling that out. All right, the last thing I'll mention is that you can earn 10% towards your final grade just for class attendance. So I will have these sign-in sheets to pass around every single class. So a lot of success in life is just showing up. So this is your bonus for just showing up. All right, syllabus grading, kind of standard. Grading breakdown. There's a lot of stuff that is going to go into this course. So there's your grading breakdown for section reviews, homework, Cog Labs, chapter quiz, and chapter mastery training. The one thing, it's pretty standard. The one thing, though, that's different in my courses is my breakdowns for how much your exam is worth. So what I do is I have what I like to call a sliding scale. So your best exam, the one that you do the best on, is going to be worth 10% of your final grade. Your second best exam is worth 9%. Your third best exam is worth 6%. And then your worst exam is worth 5%. And I like having this sliding scale because I know that some students are going to struggle during some sections. Some students might not understand memory, but later on they'll understand decision making. So this is just a little bit of a safety net in case something doesn't make sense for you, or if you come unprepared to an exam. Even if you do poorly on one exam, it is not going to harm your grade. It's mitigated by this sliding scale, and that equals, plus the class attendance, that equals the 100%. All right, almost done. So accommodations for religious observances or students with disabilities, academic honesty and conduct, and what you should know about sexual misconduct. That is all available on the syllabus. Please familiarize yourself with that, especially if you need accommodations for religious observances or if you need accommodations for disabilities. Please let me know as soon as possible, and we'll make sure that you get those accommodations. In terms of electronic devices, during exams, no devices of any kind. So put away all your stuff, all your cell phones, all your laptops. If you want to use your cell phones for recording lectures, feel free. If you want to take, audio recording, take snapshots of the screen, feel free to do that. The one thing that I don't want you using, though, is to use it for communication. And I am completely understanding of the fact that some of you have obligations outside of this classroom. So I would imagine that there are parents here that either have children in school or maybe in daycare, and you might get that emergency phone call. You might get that buzzing in your pocket, and you got to take it. I am completely understanding. All that I ask is that if that happens, just stand up, go outside, deal with your business, just so that we can have that conducive learning environment where people are free of distractions. And I know it's very tempting, even if it's a text, please take it outside, because I know who's answering their texts. All right, this is not subtle. All right, and I can tell who it is. So just be fair to everybody. Let's make this a place where we focus on cognitive psychology. And I understand you might need to take something. By all means, take it outside. Come on back. It's not going to be an issue. All right, one last thing. We'll take a look at the syllabus, and then we'll wrap up for today. So the syllabus, the one thing that you can read through it, a lot of the information that we looked at today is reproduced in the syllabus. But the one thing that I want to point out is this class schedule here. So the class schedule, all right, so you can see here for the first week, nothing's due this first week, all right, so this is just, we're going to ease into it. If you can, try to read chapter 1 by next class, but I know we just started, but, if you can do it, if you can't, it's not going to be that much of an issue. January 15th, we're going to have a special topic, representation in AI. Sometimes we'll go outside of the book. But here in red, that'll indicate when things are due. So that'll indicate the due dates. And I want you to notice that the due dates are midnight before class. So we meet on the 15th. These assignments are due January 14th by 11:59 p.m. So just be aware of that. I like to have my stuff due midnight the day before. And the first things that are going to be due are that getting started. This is going to show you how to use the e-text. And then the first section reviews. This is going to be the quizzes on the section in chapter 1. And again, that'll just help you get prepared for the classes that are coming. And as you scroll through, it'll indicate what is due on those particular days. Don't get intimidated if there are, 7 or 8 things due. Most of these are really, really short. So, for example, situated cognition, all of these are 5-minute videos followed up by 4 or 5 multiple choice questions. So don't get intimidated, but definitely, use this to kind of plan ahead. So you are going to be reading section 4.1, .2, and .5 for the January 17th class. So, just use that to kind of schedule your days. And then the other thing to be aware of is the exam days. So on the exam, so when we have an exam, that's the only thing we're doing in that class. And mastery training is due midnight before the exam. So mastery training is part of you getting prepared for the exam. So it's always going to be whatever chapters we covered, that mastery training is going to be due midnight before that exam day. And take a look through the rest of the syllabus, and again, it just indicates what you need to read, what to do on that day. Was there a question? You got it? All right. Any other questions about anything that we've seen today? Yep.
If we have to miss an exam, does the document also make it an excused absence, or is that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the question was, if you miss an exam, is it an excused absence? So to answer to that, yes. If you have to miss an exam, you get an excused absence. The other thing is that you will earn attendance points for attending exams as well. So, but that's a good question. Anything else? All right. Well, that is it for today. So thanks for your patience while we dealt with that technical issue that came out of nowhere. And I'll see you all next time. So definitely nothing is due next time, but get into the module, check it out, make sure it works on your computer, and just start poking around and checking out some of this stuff.